Trump tonight, dealing with the challenges of decent housing in Uganda. How will the upcoming real estate survey help in addressing some of these challenges? Real estate has become a major avenue of investment, directly contributing to wealth creation and also helping the country address its housing needs. The housing sector has experienced a record growth over the past decade. Current figures indicate the growth averaged 7% over the last 5 years. However, there are concerns that this sector is not yet well regulated and that it's part of the huge challenges contributing to land wrangles involving real estate companies. In other countries, such a survey is critical in establishing the quality of housing and the general standards. In Uganda, there have been challenges linked to planning, housing, building standards, among others. A survey by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics indicates that Uganda has a housing deficit of 550,000 units. About 160,000 of this gap is in the urban areas. Kampala alone has a housing deficit of 100,000 units. Now, Uganda's population is growing at a rate of 3.2% per annum and is projected to reach 45 million people by 2020. With a rapid rate of urbanization, it is estimated that 2 decades from now, Uganda will have a housing shortage of close to 8 million units, of which 2.5 million will be in urban areas, with 1 million of these in Kampala alone. The real estate players are also unhappy about the lack of funding to help them invest more, and the fact that many people in Uganda do not have the liberty to acquire mortgages in order to own the houses. There are also challenges connected to the real estate prices and financial stability, considering the fact that many houses are purchased by Ugandans in the diaspora and multinationals. Faced with numerous statistical demands, government has now decided to undertake a real estate survey aimed at establishing how it is influencing the economy and what needs to be done to improve it. So tonight we look at the planned survey while analyzing the challenges and opportunities in the sector. Our guests tonight, Dr. Charles Abuka, Director of Financial Stability at the Central Bank of Uganda. You're most welcome, Dr. Abuka.
Good evening, listener.
We are also joined by Mr. Ronald Ssombwe, Acting Principal Statistician in the Macroeconomic Statistics Department of the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. You're most welcome, Mr. Ssombwe.
Good evening, listener.
Can you tell us about this survey?
The Bank of Uganda and the Uganda Bureau of Statistics are conducting a survey mainly on real estate sector. It is to collect data on land and property prices. Data on land and property prices has not been available. This is the first time it's being collected in Uganda. This data helps us to understand the economy and also helps people plan better.
Yes, and when will it be carried out?
The survey is already on. We started with the pilot in December, testing instruments and the staff. Today we've gone 8 months into the survey, and we have so far reached about 524 stakeholders in the estate sector. However, we find that many of them that registered during the Census of Business Establishment, which was conducted in 2009-10 by the Bureau of Statistics, many of them are not in the sector now. So we are finding it difficult to locate many of the real estate agents in the sector.
Can you characterize the industry for us a bit?
The industry has, so far we are looking at 3 main real estate subsectors. We have land sales, buying and selling. We have construction of houses and selling them. Then we have commercial rentals, especially in Kampala. Now, when you look at the geography, we have about 90% of the real estate agents operating in the Greater Kampala region, and to us, Greater Kampala region is Entebbe, Mukono, Wakiso, and Kampala City.
And is it, give us some old statistics that you have, some base statistics.
Concerning real estate, the Bureau of Statistics measures the performance of the sector through the GDP compilation process, but the data used is mainly from surveys, and so we have indicators that are generated from the survey system. However, for now, we want to develop a real estate index to directly measure the performance of the sector, but mainly looking at the trend of prices of these real estates.
And is the government doing something about bridging this gap? Because we have figures like there's a deficit of 500,000 housing units. How do you arrive at these figures?
Well, I think the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development has to put in place systems to overcome the deficit. But for the Bureau of Statistics and the Bank of Uganda, as we speak now, we are looking at measuring the levels in the prices of land, houses on sale, and then the commercial rentals in the Greater Kampala region.
Dr. Abuka, why do we need to know prices in the real estate industry?
We need to know prices in the real estate industries because they are very important if you are to maintain financial stability. We have seen in a number of countries in the world, real estate prices seem to contain information which you can use to tell whether the financial system will be stable over time. So it's a very good input in terms of policy making in the financial sector.
And so you'll input it into your inflation data. You'll have it in the inflation in planning data.
Yeah, we'll put it especially in terms of analyzing the relationship between the private sector, the construction industry, and bank balance sheets.
And you've spoken about these real estate prices helping in financial stability analysis. How does that work?
Basically, it works this way. If we have got an index of houses or land, we will begin to monitor the way that index is moving over time. So the way it moves over time, we'll design other measures that help us to find out when there is probably a bubble, or when it is about the price is about to collapse. Because we know that as prices of real estate improve, it is good even for the banking system. Its real estate, its capital position improves because of the real estate component it has on its balance sheets. But when they begin to fall, then it can be a danger to the whole financial system. For instance, the banks which are now exposed to the real estate sector, if there is a collapse in the prices, the borrowers are unable to pay, and that affects the bank performance. So that's why it's very important to monitor these prices.
And that's what happened in the US, which caused the world economy to reel.
Yeah. You're right, and of course what the US has shown, what happens in the real estate sector can also be transmitted across the world. So it has got important things to do with financial sector, even at the regional level.
Broadly speaking, do you think it's moving in the right direction? There were whispers some time back that the industry was probably overheating. You spoke about a bubble. Do you think it could be overheating, even without statistics?
Yeah. Most Ugandans are familiar now that land and the house prices have been growing, but you need to put some traction to it. You need to actually measure to be able to tell what is the rate of growth. You cannot tell the rate of growth without having an index. So you first need to measure. Otherwise, you'll just be having kind of anecdotal information without actually measuring.
And this anecdotal information, whatever we have now, what could it tell us? I know it's not empirical, but anecdotally.
Yeah, it does indicate a number of issues. One of them, it could be referring to what you have said. You have indicated that there is pent-up demand for housing. So part of it is actually genuine, responding to actual need, because the population is growing, the incomes are increasing. But now we need to sieve out which part of that growth in house and land prices is out of the normal. What is out of the normal is what we're interested in, and that is what might cause problems.
Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, dealing with the challenge of decent housing in Uganda. How will the upcoming real estate survey help in addressing some of these challenges? Our guests, Dr. Charles Abuka, Director of Financial Stability at the Central Bank, and Mr. Ronald Ssombwe, Acting Principal Statistician in the Macroeconomics Statistics Department at the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. You will be able to contribute to this discussion at some stage. Mr. Ssombwe, yes. What are your methods? Outline them for us a little bit. You say real estate people have gone to other business. Maybe they're growing cassava, we don't know. But what methods are you now going to use?
In measuring the index, we are looking at, first of all, using the data that we shall get from the industry to measure the trends in the prices of land, housing, and commercial rentals. Now, for land, we have a methodology, a method of compiling an index called the Modified Last Payers Index. Now this is really technical. We get the numbers and we develop weights, and the weight is by the location where the real estate is on sale. But when it comes to housing is difficult. Each house has a different characteristic, and so you cannot have a direct index out of the houses that are on sale. So we have an approach called the hedonic approach, and this is a model approach. We have to get all the characteristics that make a price for a house or for a commercial rental space, for instance.
Cement, air conditioning, and so on.
Yeah, air conditioning, the tiles and the rest. We put into the model, and this model will help us to get a standard price. Whether the house on sale is incomplete, whether the house on sale is a condominium or a semi-detached, we shall have a standard out of that model. And so the standard prices we shall get, we shall put them into the last payers system, and then we shall develop our index. But the major part is to get accurate data from the sector.
And are you finding that easy, or is it a run up the hill?
For now, we have contacted about 250. We were looking for 560 between January and June, but as you can see, we got only half. Many of them are no longer in the sector. As you say, they could be doing other business. Now, when it comes to the data that we have, our agents have selected the data to give. It is quite threadbare, and I think as we talk here, we shall interact with some of them on the spectrum and send out an appeal to share data so that we can have an index that is usable by the sector to monitor their own the price trends on the market.
So, I mean, if people are moving out of this industry, is it a good industry? I know even when banks squeezed lending, they still continued to lend to the construction sector, manufacturing, and trade. But you say some of the indicators are the real estate agents, and you say they are moving out, going to grow avocado. Is it a sector that's going to shape up?
I think so with the index. I think the problem is that many of our agents in the real estate sector cannot measure. They do not have a basis for measuring the direction of the business, and we now find that the business is erratic. An agent has business today, 2 months down the road he has no business, he has sold off and is moving elsewhere. So I think it is an issue of getting this index to understand the direction. If the direction is positive, I don't see an agent moving out. So lacking this index at the moment could be sending many any direction.
Dr. Abuka, is it an industry that has matured? Are we doing this too early?
No, we're not doing it too early. I think the industry is, I would say it's fairly robust. I think what my colleague is relating to is dealing with the issue of business startups also in Uganda. But if we look at the sector, it grew by about 5.8% last year alone. But of interest to us, if you look at loan extensions to the building, mortgage and real sector, to June last year, from June 2011 to 12, the share of loans to construction sector actually were 23%. That's about
almost 1/4.
That's about 1.7 trillion of the 7.2 trillion that has been extended. So the sector is growing. The sector has a basis. I wouldn't say that is very premature.
And you know it has a lot of offshoots. If you talk about construction, talk about cement and other things, it's one of the labor-intensive industries. It creates a large amount of employment. And once the house is complete, there are other things, furnishings and so on. Are you going to set rents, for instance, once you have this data?
No. It is not for setting rents. This is really for improving our policy purposes. For example, and improving the targeting of policy. If we have seen that the issues we want to deal with bank and household balance sheets, then the policy should actually target those. Then we begin to look at things like loan to value ratios, debt to income ratios, to see how to better design those policies to attack that specific area of the real estate sector. So that kind of policy, what is now called macroprudential policy, might actually deliver better results in these circumstances than traditional monetary or fiscal policy.
Mr. Ssombwe, can you give us some anecdotal characteristics of housing in Kampala, Greater Kampala if you like? But let's start with Central Kampala. What kind of house can one expect? We know about the French cut, but give us what you see when you look at your statistics and look at the skyline.
When we moved in the field to collect data starting January, we find that there's all types of structures in Kampala, in the Greater Kampala region. We have single room houses on sale.
The bed sitters.
The bed sitters, they are there on sale. We have semi-detached bungalows. We have condominiums. We have flats. We have all sorts of buildings on sale. And if we are talking about expecting, I will not say that expect to find such and such a house, because all the houses we find on the market, they are out of demand. So there is somebody out there that is demanding a type of a house, and the constructor gets a mortgage from the bank to put it up. So it is an issue of demand, and whether the supply is able to meet the demand.
You're saying there's demand right from the bottom, the bed sits, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Where does it stop?
We have these flats like the one of Knight Frank, National Housing. You know, you have around 20
units in
one block. So those are there. And I wondered how you have a title somewhere in the sky.
Right.
You know, so you get
Well, learning to get used to those things, the condominium loan.
So that is where we are. Yeah.
Right. But mostly you're talking about 3-bedroom houses. That's kind of the ceiling for the mass market.
Yeah, for many of them are in that type of housing.
Let's talk about land. Is it being put to good use?
Well, use is also a demand-supply issue. In the Greater Kampala region, we have found that most of the land on sale is residential. We do not have agricultural land within the Greater Kampala region. And it will be a question of whether we shall expand outside the Greater Kampala region. But for now, we are looking at mainly small plots, 50 by 100 feet, 16 by 50. You know, you wonder what type of a house can go on a 16 by 50 feet. But it is all in the market, and we have all such data coming to us, and we shall put good use of that data.
Dr. Abuka, do you have any statistics about how the industry performed last year?
What the
real estate sector?
Yeah, that's what I was indicating a little bit earlier.
Yes.
That it grew by about 5.8%.
Yes. Give us some volume, some figures beyond the percentages.
Its access to credit has expanded. It's now the lead sector as of end June, beating traditional access from trade and manufacturing. So it's coming up as an important sector in terms of access to financial resources that are being extended by the banking system. Can you
sectorize for us this sector? You have industrial construction, you have road construction, you could have domestic construction. Maybe all the money is going into the big sectors, building industries and factories and roads.
Again, if you go down into the real estate lending, the main players, as my colleague has indicated, are lending for property developments and real estate agents. That's the main one, taking about 27% of credit extended to the real estate sector. That is followed immediately by residential mortgages. You've realized of late, access to residential mortgages has expanded by a number of banks in our system. That comes in second in the real estate sector, and of course commercial mortgages. So those are the three main ones that are accessing.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Ssombwe, why should a real estate agent give you data?
Well, at the moment, we shall start with the the desire to build an index to inform.
Let's talk about the man in his office in William Street.
Yeah, that is the one I'm talking about. He's dealing in real estate. He has a piece of land at Kalere and another in Moyenga, and he needs to know the trends of prices and the volumes on trade in these areas. And it is really a great moment for me to be here to appreciate all the real estate agents who have given us data, and we promise that we shall build an index and share it. It will be public. It will be used by the real estate agents to know the direction of trade in the sector, the volumes and the prices. You know, it is good to go into the market knowing the price levels. Very good. And if you'll be cheated with this index, you won't. So the man at William will have his day to discuss with the client on a level ground of knowledge.
And Dr. Abuka, once you have all this data in, you pass it on Allen Kajina, then he can tax these real estate agents properly.
No. This information is strictly for studying the trend in prices. It is not for tax purposes. And as my colleague has indicated, there are a number of benefits that can come from picking this information. It's good for... This information is good in terms of, as I've indicated, as financial stability indicators on the one hand. It's also good for planning investment. It's good for policy. So there are more advantages that we seek to gain from monitoring real estate prices than taxation.
Right. So you'll aggregate that data. You won't give it to anyone. It will be confidential information, the individual information that you get from the information that you get from the individual operators. But you will aggregate it and publish it in broad forms.
And that's right. We will aggregate it. Information on individual characteristics will not be disseminated. The index will be published on a quarterly basis and will be available to the public free of charge.
And before we go for the break, Mr. Ssombwe, which areas are you covering geographically? You said you're covering Greater Kampala, Mukono, Wachiso,
and the city.
And the city.
Yes.
The city center.
Yes.
Both commercial and residential.
Yes, both commercial and residential.
Listeners, we're going for a break. This is Spectrum. We'll be back.
You can pay, you can buy, pay your bills, pay school fees, send cash overseas, pay taxi fees, and salaries, anything you need, anything you need.
You can do anything with MTN Mobile Money. And now, for the first time in Uganda, you can even pay your electricity bills. Go to your MTN Mobile Money menu, select Pay Bills, select Umeme Touch Pay, and follow the prompts.
MTN. Everywhere you go. John, Mike, and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back. On Spectrum tonight, dealing with the challenge of decent housing in Uganda. How will the upcoming real estate survey help in addressing some of the challenges? Our guests tonight, Dr. Charles Abuka, Director of Financial Stability at the Central Bank, and Mr. Ronald Ssombwe, Acting Principal Statistician in the Macroeconomic Statistics Department at the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. You will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Is Uganda's land well zoned? Dr. Abuka.
What I can speak to that is that zoning will be very important and is part of fiscal planning. Government, I think, has a policy on fiscal planning, and if it is implemented, then this should be able to guide the way we develop going forward, because land quality, land value is affected by very much by zoning.
And explain this zoning to us a little bit.
Simply, it is setting particular areas for specific purposes. If an area is residential, you don't again put in factories. Clarifying land
if it's
use,
a university, you don't put a factory.
Something like that. Yeah.
If it's a school, you don't build a hotel, things like that. Are we doing well on that, or do we have to learn lessons yet?
I think we'll need to learn lessons, and there is quite significant room for improvement.
But that's the problem. I have my land, I can build a house, you can have a market next door, another person can have a hotel. This corner, what's the importance of zoning?
Lack of zoning actually is what we see in our current developments, because everything is probably in the wrong places. We are mixing land use types, and that is causing problems for infrastructure. It's causing problems, as I said, for land values. It's causing problems in terms of expanding going forward. But of course, those are wider issues than we are covering in our current debate on just prices of real estate.
All right, and the sector of the construction sector, most of the money goes to, is it residential or the industries? Do you have that information?
Yeah, we said in terms of lending, we see most of it going to property developers and real estate agents. The second is residential mortgages. Those ones are taking about 25% of what is going to the real estate sector, and commercial mortgages. A very small component, about 1.5%, is going to land purchases because of the structure of financing.
All right, Mr. Ssombwe, what determines real estate prices broadly?
According to the survey that we are conducting, we found that land prices are mainly determined by, first of all, the demand, but also the location. Yeah, for houses, it is the characteristics of the house. If you want a house that has every bit of foreign tiles and air conditioning and the rest. So the characteristics for houses depends on what you put on the house. Now for commercial rental space, especially in Kampala here, if you want a well-furnished office, you won't find it furnished, it will be a different price. If you want an empty room and you furnish it yourself, it will be a different price, despite the location. Now, still, the location comes in. Faraway places from Kampala, for instance, Wakiso or Entebbe, you will find that office space on rent or for rental, it will be much cheaper than on William here. So location and demand are really major factors in determining the prices of real estate.
Well, somebody said there are only three important things in terms of real estate pricing. He said the first one is location, the second one is location, the third one is location.
Yeah.
Is the industry growing well?
Well, we are yet to measure, but if you have a 5.8 growth in a sector, I think that is not a bad performance.
That's commensurate with economic growth.
It is even higher overall.
For the last year?
For the last year, 5.8 is way above
the 3.2. So.
Yeah, of course. So the sector is really performing quite very well.
And if we look at a curve over a period of about 10 years, is it shaping up well?
We need to get more information to project that, to ensure that the direction will be positive over the longer term.
Dr. Abuka, do you have some comparative figures for the years gone by, beyond last year?
Yeah, as you indicated earlier, the average growth for the sectors ranged between about 5 and 6%. That is fairly good growth. And there are a number of reasons why the sector should grow fairly well going forward. One of them is growing population and the middle class component of that population is also is growing. The other one has to do with the interest from Ugandans who are abroad also buying into real estate. But apart from that, if you discover, for instance, resources like oil, discovery and extraction will also affect the demand for housing and related real estate. So there are a number of factors that are going to make this a growth zone.
And what is the government's role in all this?
Of course, the government's role is to give a conducive environment for the sector to grow forward. In terms of reducing the costs of doing business in the area, in terms of setting appropriate policies with regard to housing and real estate generally. Once the environment is good, the costs of doing business in the housing sector come down, the infrastructure is available for people to invest in the sector, that will be a conducive environment to drive it even much better.
And is government doing this, building roads, access roads and so on, electricity, water?
Yeah, I think the government is doing that. We are seeing emphasis on infrastructure. Again, the budget also emphasized infrastructure, investment in roads, in water, in rural electrification. So the infrastructure component, I think, is being handled in the budget.
And why should it be Bank of Uganda to do this?
No, the Bank of Uganda is only interested in the component dealing with monitoring the prices, because as I said, these are very important for us in terms of telling how will lending to the real sector affect the performance of the banking system. We want to ensure that our financial sector is resilient going forward, even as the sector grows. We want to ensure that people who access loans from the housing, for houses and real estate purchases are able to pay back, so that the financial system is stable.
And your mission as a central bank is to foster price stability. So housing, when you come to look at housing, to begin to look at housing, it's basically saying the industry has become very important. It could destabilize not just the banking sector, but even prices across the board.
Yeah, that's right. Boom in the housing sector can also drive prices, because it affects prices of construction materials and so on. So these are very important components.
Mr. Ssombwe, what other bottlenecks are you meeting as you look for this data, and what are some of the solutions? You say already behind schedule because you can't find some of the agents.
Of course, the greater bottleneck is locating the agents. During the census of business establishments 2009, many of the real estate agents registered with the Bureau of Statistics in the business register. Now, this is the business register that we are using to go back to the field
to look for them.
Now, many of them have actually asked us, how did you locate me? How did you get my name? I'm not a company on the road. How did you get here? I mean, the answer is simple, and is that you registered during the 2009-10 census of business registration. So this, the problem is that many of them are not in the market, and the data collectors are informing us that when they go to a location, the location is there. It is the location that was registered, but the agent is now dealing in selling carpets or something like that.
Right.
And then the other issue is skepticism. Our agents think that the Bank of Uganda has teamed up with the Bureau of Statistics and URA to track the agents down wherever they are for taxation. But we all know that all businesses, wherever they are, URA knows about them. And no agent in real estate will be taxed without indicating profit, you know. So they know where the businesses are. For us, the skepticism is keeping the progress of this survey back, and it would be in such a forum that we share with the real estate agents that this is for the benefit of both the players in the sector and the government to monitor financial stability.
And Dr. Abuka, what would you say are the gaps in the industry when you look at some of the figures that you already have?
Our main gap at the moment is to establish a direction of prices in the industry. This information has not been collected. That's why we have teamed up with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Once we're able to track the movement in prices, we'll have solved quite a big challenge that we face. Within the region, Kenya, for instance, has a real estate price index, but we don't have one yet. What we have are some private sector attempts, but they are not comprehensive enough. We need something that is comprehensive. We need something that is publicly available, and our contribution to the real estate index price collection is actually a public good because it is a government regulatory function. If we are able to understand how these prices are evolving, they help us in terms of formulating policy for financial stability.
And what are some of these private sector attempts? Knight Frank used to publish some documents in the past. I don't know if they still do.
Yeah, I think they do. They still continue to publish. So we want something that is more broader in coverage. And that is publicly accessible.
So the ones the private sectors are doing, they are limited to probably their own narrow sector, their own narrow operation.
Yeah,
that is it.
And if you left it to, for instance, the commercial bank to collect, it would not be good because there would be a problem of moral hazard actually. So it's important that a different government agency actually computes these prices.
And how much can you get from the commercial banks? How much data can you get from them? About the industry?
We get a lot of data from the commercial banks. Part of the data that we get from the commercial banks is what I've indicated to you on credit extensions. We get data on different sectors to which they have extended. We get data on how the credit extensions are growing, how they are performing, and that information is very important now. If we relate it with the way prices are shaping up in the sector, gives us a much more broader picture in terms of understanding how the sector is performing.
And when will you publish the figures and how?
We think that by December we shall have some numbers that we can share within between the bank and the Bureau of Statistics, and that is just to create the basis upon which to measure the index subsequently. So by January, February, we hope that we can call the real estate agents and share this index with them, and I think from there we shall be able to measure it quarterly and then publish it.
Maybe just to add, the public might just think that it's taking very long to out this index. This is an index you are beginning to construct now. There are a number of things. You have to establish a base. To establish a base, you need to collect data over a period of time, at the minimum at least 12 months. You analyze it, pick out the key determinants, as he has indicated to you, characteristics of the residential units, the characteristics of the land. It's much easier with land, but more complicated on housing, because the number of problems with housing. One, it's very difficult for you to tell the price of a house unless somebody sells it actually. So sales are infrequent. But these are problems that have now been sort of handled methodologically. So this is what we are doing now. That's why he's indicating a period of December. We need to come out with something which is robust, that the public can rely on.
So briefly, how will you bridge the gap? The people who don't exist anymore that you thought did exist, the real estate agents?
In methodology, it is good enough that we did not sample. we went to get data from all the real estate agents that exist. Now that we think that there are 890 agents, if we find that we are able to meet 400 of them, that will become our census results. So the other number that we are not able to locate, we shall just leave it out. So bridging the gap is not there in this case. Had it been a sample, there would be problems. But now, what we shall come up with at the end of December will become our census, and that will not, we will not have data gaps in terms of respondents. We shall have had them. But the problem will be in what he has explained as data being volatile. You have a business you have business today, 2 months down the road you have nothing to sell. So we shall do that bridging of missing data gaps by our methodologies.
And talk to us about this index. What exactly is it?
The index has 3 groups or 3 pieces in one. We shall have a land price index. We shall have a housing, residential house sale index, and then we shall have commercial rental index.
Land price index?
Land price index.
Yes.
Residential price index, residential house.
Yes.
Price index, and then the commercial rental price index. On the side of mortgages, it will be a volume index, because each mortgage has its own price.
Yes.
So for financial stability, we would like to know how much mortgage flows into the financial system, and how long does it take the banks to recoup the mortgages, the principal and their interest. So we have those indices, and there will be stand-alone indices. We shall not compose them. We shall not.
They'll not be composited?
They will not be.
And what will an index be able to tell someone? Commercial house index or residential house index? What, you have a figure like power inflation. What will it be able to tell someone?
It will indicate the level of the price at a time. When we get like a series over a period of 1 year, we are able to compute monthly price changes for the land prices. And now this is not land the way they sell it. It is a square meter of land at a time. So this will be the change in the price of a square meter of land, in that location,
Right.
Likewise the houses, likewise the commercial rental space.
So you'll have it segregated, Kampala, different price.
Exactly.
You will know where to go for land. Well, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can call in now. Our number is 0414348111, 0312-261-390, 0312-260-390. Spectrum tonight dealing with the challenge of decent housing in Uganda. How will the upcoming real estate survey help in addressing some of the challenges? When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. The numbers again: 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. Spectrum, hello.
Yes, good evening, Spectrum.
Good evening, sir. Your name?
Yes, my name is Abuka, good friend.
To call back in, we'd like to hear the fullness of that contribution. Our number is 0414-348-260-390, 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. Yes, Mr. Ssombwe, you're talking a little bit about the index.
Yes.
Explain to us exactly what you mean by this index.
We first of all, we shall have standard prices. If it is land, we are going to measure an index in terms of the price per square meter of land. We have conversion factors, whether it is a square feet or a mile or an acre. We are going to translate all land data into a square meter. For houses, we shall have a standard house, but now we do not know what a standard house is, except by a model. We shall develop
use
a
the
model.
French cut model.
Yeah, we shall use our modeling techniques and get the standard prices, fitted prices for a standard house. So when we get the index, it will only show the price of a square meter of land in Chisasi, in Entebbe. So if you are selling a mile, you need to translate into a square meter, and then you'll know how much to get out of your piece of land. I mean, there will be no more science in computing the price.
Scratching your head,
yeah,
closing the eyes.
No, you do not have to do so after this index is in place. So we shall provide the index and the price, the unit price for a square meter of land for each area. But at the end of the day, we have around 50 different locations so far. So we shall have to composite all this and show that in the Greater Kampala region, the price of a square meter of land is this price. But then somebody on Loom Street may not use that figure. He will come to dig in and say, for me, my piece of land is in Chisasi. What is the index for Chisasi area?
And yet they're in the same zoning area.
Exactly. So we shall have all these mini indices, and they will be available for the public to use.
You will publish them?
Yeah, we shall publish them.
Public information, not hidden somewhere?
No, we shall not hide anything.
You were trying to call back. This is me, Mr. Godfrey again.
Yes, Godfrey.
Now,
Yes.
Maybe just to clarify at the onset, what we are doing for the indices on land and house prices is to get a measure of how those prices are changing over time. We are not seeking to establish controls on or set prices at which people will trade their land or their houses.
You're not trend fixing?
No, we are not.
Not price fixing?
No. And indeed, land in Mpigi, as he says, it will have its own index. If the land in that place is costly, the index will be high, and nobody will allow to sell below the average cost in the area. So while we can have a price that is low overall, for instance, is selling land in Ruwero, you cannot compare that piece of land with the one in Kololo. So
Kololo won't be a big difference.
Exactly. So the Kololo index will be much higher than the one in Ruwero. So I don't think, as he has said, we do not have controls for this, but just an indication of the changing prices of land in different locations.
Spectrum, hello?
hi,
Yes, sir, your name?
George.
Yes, Judge. Judge, can you switch off your radio? Walk away from it.
I'm just trying to find out.
Part of the money is coming from you, Judge, I believe, through the Bank of Uganda. Anyhow, both are government agencies. Please go on.
Thank you very much, George. This is a pertinent question. It is in public interest that we are able to monitor real estate prices because, as I indicated earlier, they are going to improve our toolkit. They are going to improve the way we conduct policy, especially to ensure financial sector stability. Especially to ensure financial sector stability. You have seen problems that happen across the world when financial systems collapse. So it's important that we are ready with policy responses. The only way we can improve our policy response is to begin to gather information that allows us to measure the sources of the risks. as I indicated to you earlier, real estate is one of those potential sources of risk. We are not saying right now where the Ugandan land and house prices are is causing a problem, but we are looking into the future so that by the time we are there, we have the information that we need to set policy appropriately. So it will benefit George. It will also be beneficial to you.
Kind of economic risk mitigation.
Yeah.
It happened in the U.S. Real estate prices were kind of managed, and it created problems for the entire world in the end. So real estate can be big. Yes, Mr. Ssombwe, in whose interest?
Well, as Dr. Abuka has explained, it is an issue of both the government and the public to know where these prices will go. You don't want to invest in real estate and tomorrow you are the one losing. I think it is in the interest of all of us.
Who's paying? Maybe you should answer that as well.
At the moment, it is the central bank which placed the demand on the Bureau of Statistics,
Yes.
and they are meeting the cost.
All right. Well, and let's get some comparison from the East African region. You mentioned a little bit of it earlier. Do the other countries do it as well? Kenya, Tanzania?
If we look at it, probably to put it in a perspective, taking the Southern African, South Africa is in a better shape.
That is like Europe. Can't compare it to some of our.
In East Africa, we have some private attempt, as I've indicated to you. So Uganda is moving in to begin to pick these prices. So this is a very good development. Once we have this information, we're in a better position. And we're already talking to Tanzania. They have been, under the collaboration, they have been talking to us. They have talked to us regarding the methodology we're using, what progress, and we're sharing all
So
this
they're learning from
experience.
us.
So, yeah, they're learning
We're being
from us. And they're
pace-setters
also
there.
going to establish one.
All right, we have to go. Thank you very much, dear guest, Mr. Dr. Charles Abuka, Director of Financial Stability at the Central Bank of Uganda. Thank you for coming to Spectrum tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Ronald Ssombwe, Acting Principal Statistician at the Macroeconomic Statistics Department at the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. Thank you for coming to Spectrum tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. She's to Spectrum. We'll be back tomorrow. Up next is the news.
Hello, Uganda. This is Regina Bell. And for my very first time ever, I'll be in Kampala for the 5th annual Nile Gold Jazz Safari on October 5th, 2012. Won't you come on out and let's show our support together for the Rotary Clubs of Uganda and building the Insomnia Cancer Ward. Now, I know this is just as important to you as it is to me. Listen, I'm not coming alone. I'll be there with two of my musical extraordinary friends, Gerald Albright and Marion Meadows. So come on out for a great evening of great music and a great experience.
The Nile Gold Jazz Safari, brought to you by Nile Gold, beyond the ordinary.